It's implicit bias training. I get it now. They're training people how to be implicitly biased. Welcome back to Barney and Clyde. This is Season 3, Episode number 4. We're going to talk about the intensification of identity politics militancy with, as always, Barney Quick, our resident conservative. I'm Clyde Myers. I'm the libertarian, and we're going to look at our conservative and libertarian views overlap and how they diverge on that topic. How you doing, Barney?
Great. How are you, Clyde?
I am fantastic.
All right. This one's kind of sticky because the atmosphere, the climate in our country is such that you have to be very careful how you go about wading into these waters because nobody wants to be called a racist. And there are so many things going on that are narrative instead of reality, but are imposed on our society that have to be spoken about.
Right.
What we're looking at today is the intensification of identity politics militancy. Identity politics militancy has been gathering momentum for many years, but just recently, the intensification of it's just been. I've got 5 examples here. Shall we just kind of go down?
Examples, yeah.
All right. Midwestern white farmers finally got to the point where they felt it was necessary to file a lawsuit about the Biden administration's policy of granting loan forgiveness to farmers. And I think a COVID-19 loan forgiveness program. But the program was restricted to socially disadvantaged farmers. That is, farmers and ranchers who are Black, American Indian, Hispanic, Alaskan Native, Asian American, or Pacific Islander. Yeah. And these farmers, a group of white Midwestern farmers, have filed a lawsuit. They're suing the federal government, alleging that they can't participate in it, and it includes farmers from Wisconsin, Minnesota, South Dakota, and Ohio. And for my money, they have a point.
I think they have a great point. They should absolutely be suing. The Biden administration. I mean, my God, everything you've heard from the left for the last almost decade, but very intensively for the last 4 years, has been this systematic racism narrative. Okay, and you can think what you want to think about that. You can think that the system is institutionally racist, or you can think that it's not. But when you have a president and you have an administration, you have government that's creating benefits based on people's skin color. I mean, how do you refute the notion of institutional racism in our country?
Exactly. Every year, this country celebrates Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and much lip service is given to his legacy and his importance in shaping this country's history and so forth. His central point was, let's get to a state of colorblindness, of judging people on the content of their character rather than the color of their skin.
But that's racist now.
Exactly, because of Ibram X. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo and their ilk, the whole critical race theory thing. Yes, you can to speak of race of a colorblind society is in of itself racist. You bet.
It's like when they said, if white people move into a neighborhood, it's gentrification. If they move out, it's white flight.
Very good point.
So it's like they put you in a frame here where you can't win. You can't make any move that's not racist. So if you're colorblind, then you're erasing their existence, right? But if you see their color, then you're differentiating them and oppressing them and making them the other. So you can't win here.
Yep. Oh, and I'd like to go on to example number 2. Biden recently stated that the Chauvin-Floyd case exemplifies systemic racism. Chauvin underwent a trial and was found guilty of second-degree murder, and I think third-degree manslaughter and something else. And in my opinion, rightly so. Between the 9.5-minute video and the testimony of witnesses and experts on police procedure and pressure on and medical expertise about pressure on the neck and all, from every angle, the guy was guilty. But we do not know, even after all the extensive evidence that was presented in this trial, we do not know whether he was motivated by racism when he killed George Floyd.
Correct. And
we don't know that.
I think if you do that, if you have no other information, then there's a white guy and a black guy, and you assume everything else and say, though, it must be racism based on that's all the data you have. You're a racist. Yeah. That's the way a racist thinks.
Well, now, and here's the kicker. Keith Ellison, the Attorney General of Minnesota, who is a black and a progressive, and as a matter of fact, is a convert to Islam, and you know, has a long record of credentials as you know, his bona fides as a lefty are in impeccable order. But he said that we cannot. There's absolutely no evidence on which to charge Chauvin with a hate crime, mm-hmm. which refutes what Biden had to say.
Well, of course, Biden is only virtue signaling. He's only interested in, you know, and virtue signaling to the base too.
Yeah, and I'd like to say one more thing before we move on from the whole police and blacks thing. And this is I got to tread carefully here, but I have caught a lot of flack whenever I mention that George Floyd, Jacob Blake, and Rayshard Brooks, the guy down in Atlanta, were all, well, 2 out of the 3 were high on hard drugs. Brooks was drunk out of his mind, and I've been taken to and we're all resisting arrest at the time of their deaths, and also had lengthy records of violent criminal behavior. When I have brought this up in social media exchanges and such, I've been really taken to task, and I like I say, I got to be. All I would say, the reason I think it merits bringing up. And Breonna Taylor, whose circumstance is a little different, and there's the whole business about no-knock warrants and all that kind of stuff in her case. But the fact is that she was still handling the finances of her drug dealer ex-boyfriend right up to her death, and was staying in regular touch with him, and knew all about the drug deal house where he did his business.
But that doesn't. Yeah, police don't get to kill you just because you're probably guilty of something, you know.
I know. My point really doesn't have a whole lot to do with police. My point is, we run perilously close to, and in some quarters have actually gone ahead and made martyrs of these people. Their deaths were. In each and every case, preventable, and that needs to be stated. But these, I recall, I'm not a huge Candace Owens fan, but she made a point, and actually she was quoting Shelby Steele, of whom I am a fan, who said that blacks are the only demographic in America that makes heroes out of its most scurrilous characters.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably better to let Candace say that. So she has the correct pigmentation to be allowed to say that. I think that in those cases, if you have somebody who's actively resisting arrest, obviously in the way our world is constructed, the police are going to try to overpower you. right?
Yeah.
Right or wrong, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And there's definitely I don't know. There's like Philando Castile was not resisting arrest. You know,
True.
I don't think Tony Temple was resisting arrest. But those people got killed in police custody. You know, well, no, Castile wasn't even in custody. He was just in his car. In the case of Breonna Taylor, I mean, okay, these people were drug dealers. To me, yeah, that's a risky business in the real world. But to me, as a libertarian, there's no reason why there should be any contraband there, and people who want to buy drugs should be allowed to buy them, and people who want to sell them should be allowed to sell them. And there's no reason why there should be any state actor busting into somebody's house in the middle of the night with a warrant or not. Like, it's ridiculous.
And I know that's where libertarians come from on it, and I respect you for that.
And I don't think that George Floyd, I think the probability that George Floyd was a really bad guy is high. But again, that's just the government, the face of the government, the police officer, you know, doesn't get to decide that person is guilty. They don't get to decide that they are to be executed, you know. And I don't think that, this is a whole other long conversation, but I don't think that Chauvin was trying to kill Floyd. So the two murder charges seem strange to me. The manslaughter charge seems appropriate. But the saddest thing about it is the fact that, again, going back to those, the principles, okay, he was high, he was drunk, whatever. So what? Big deal. Do we need to apprehend that guy? He passed a counterfeit 20, you know? Okay, yeah, we need to go talk to that guy. Do we need to have this level of enforcement over $20?
Okay, and those are interesting questions.
But I also don't think it's necessarily a race question. I think if I got pulled over, I've got no warrants or whatever, I think if I hopped out of the car and took off running, I think I'd probably get a boot on my head, you know?
Yeah. Well, okay, we've got three more examples I want to make sure we get to. Biden gave what was not exactly a formal State of the Union address because he was only sworn in January, but he recently gave an address to Congress, and the Republicans chose Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina to give the Republican speech afterwards, because Biden had brought up that business about systemic racism. America suffers from the stain of systemic racism. And Tim Scott, who I think probably all our listeners know is black, said America is not systemically racist. A Texas Democrat Party official called Tim Scott an Oreo. As a result of that, came in for a lot of flack for having done so, but the Texas Democrat Party would not let him resign.
And this is Gary O'Connor. Is he a white guy or is he a black guy? The guy who called him an Oreo.
You know, I'm not even sure.
I guess it shouldn't matter. I'm looking it up now. Is the Oreo thing like he's like black on the outside but white on the inside?
Exactly.
Oh, okay, that's kind of funny. Why is it that the Democrats are always the ones that, you know, like I guess not always, but for all their calling out and canceling of people who say, you know, anything that just mentions the existence of race or, you know, whatever. Why do they let each other get away with this?
Cowardice. There's such a fear of being called a racist in America that people let a lot of things go unsaid and unaddressed.
Well, yeah, like that Virginia governor, he was in like Blackface or something, and they swept that one under the rug, and Cuomo's made some comments and such, and that's not a problem.
Yeah.
But I think maybe they're right. I think maybe there is systemic racism in the United States, and it's in the Democrat Party, and I think maybe we should do something about it.
I'm not sure what can be done except to have the courage to speak out. And
well, I think that they should pay reparations. I think that the Democratic Party should pay reparations for all of the policies that they've supported that have impacted African Americans, like slavery and Jim Crow and segregated schools and redlining. I think Yeah, I think the Democratic Party should pay reparations.
I
think they should fold the organization if they can't come up with the money.
Well, in a different kind of world, perhaps that could be done.
I'm being a little bit facetious, but you see what I mean, though.
Sure. Another example, the great Frederick Hess, who specializes in educational issues for the American Enterprise Institute, had a piece where he recently that talked about this. The University of Pennsylvania, at that school, as at a lot of institutions of higher learning, a lot of faculty had their research hindered by COVID, by all the lockdown and all the things attendant to it that really slowed down people's research, which is important to their career tracks. The University of Pennsylvania has instituted a program to help with that, but did so on the basis of race, of identity. Blacks and women got first dibs on this help. Once again, that's kind of like the Biden administration's loan forgiveness program for farmers. We are not going in the right direction when we do institute these programs on the basis of race. We are not getting closer to Dr. King's vision.
I don't understand how the modern left thinks that they're going to stop racism and stop racial profiling with these policies, or that they're going to make racial tensions better. Because what you'll see is the continued vilification of white people in the media, right? White people are causing all the race problems and all that kind of stuff. White people are privileged. White people are advantaged. And again, I don't know. Maybe some of that's true. You bring your evidence. That's fine. But what you'll see is the white farmers not qualifying for the loan forgiveness. They're going to see jobs programs that target African Americans and other minorities. And those white people that got left out of being helped, there was a COVID relief in California proposed that was again only for Black residents, okay, and maybe statistically we're suffering more. I don't think you could say someone who's at a certain income level is suffering more than another person at the exact same income level, but maybe, I don't know. But it doesn't matter, because those people will see, well, they're getting helped, right? I'm not getting helped, and I'm being told I'm the villain. So yeah. So guess what? You had somebody who wasn't racist, and then you gave them a reason to be pissed off at somebody else that's getting advantages because of their skin color. And they're fueling it from both sides. They're making white people be more mad at minorities, and they're making minorities be more mad at white people, and they're just creating this toxic hell stew of vitriol.
Yeah. And we perpetuate this stuff in our educational system and in the corporate world. We were talking a while ago in the last episode about, we briefly mentioned corporate wokeism. Uh-huh. And while I understand the left has, and certain elements of the right have made a useful tool out of, well, let me put this differently. Certain people on the right have gone about pointing out corporate wokeism in a very boneheaded way. I don't think it helped anything for Kevin McCarthy to read Green Eggs and Ham on the House floor, for instance.
Jeez.
And that kind of thing gives the left an opportunity to say, oh, those silly right-wingers getting all preoccupied over nothing at all, and when there's important matters on the nation's plate. No, corporate wokeism is a real thing, and Coca-Cola's employee training program that had to do with examine your whiteness, and Disney is coming up with an employee training program based on critical race theory, and the educational system. I know of a school system of my acquaintance that is instituting implicit bias training, and the local Human Rights Commission has the school system's ear and is trying to introduce the 1619 project into the local curriculum.
That's the thing. Like implicit bias training. Okay, you know what? I don't have a problem with that. But but if it was really that, if it was really just teaching people, students and teachers and everyone involved, how to be a critical thinker and how to recognize your implicit biases.
Yeah.
But these things, like the critical race theory and such, they start at the assumption of power, the assumption of malevolence from people with white skin.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's implicit bias training. I think that that's just implicit bias. They don't even recognize it in themselves. How can they teach it?
Well, okay, as we often do.
I'm sorry, Barney. It's implicit bias training. I get it now. They're training people how to be implicitly biased.
There you go. Exactly. As we've been doing some lately, we kind of wind things up by saying, where do we go from here? What can be done? I mean, or is the increasing intensification of identity politics, militancy, just a done deal, and it's going to continue to get more egregious?
Well, are you asking for my opinion?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, well, I think that there's a delightfully simple resolution to this, and that's free market economics. And you just let people conduct their affairs the way they want to. And if you stop subsidizing one person's activities based on someone else's productive output, you won't see these things. And people will argue, yeah, but the free market led to all these problems that minorities face now and have throughout history. And I think that that is absolute horseshit. It was interventions into the marketplace that led to those things. Okay, Jim Crow laws were laws. They weren't recommendations, and they weren't imposed by the burger shop that was just trying to make a few bucks. They were imposed by the government because the willing participants in the economy were far too willing to only see green as the color that matters.
Yeah.
They were solving this problem. They had to create barriers for people to be able to transact with each other. And they've made it worse and worse and worse. And now that it started to maybe get a little bit better, now they've got to dredge it all up again.
Clyde, by golly, that was well within the Venn diagram overlap.
So what's your vision there? Like, how do we actually implement that? Or do you see other caveats there?
Well, there's a political level, and you got to push for people to go to our primarily state legislatures who will push for more choice in education. We have to speak out on social media, I suppose, and in opinion venues and so forth.
I think we need to run for school board, too. I think we need to speak out at the PTA or whatever the modern equivalent of that is, and just demand, if we hear of this going on in our schools, if they're teaching our kids how to be racist and judge people based on the color of their skin, we got to pull our kids out. We've got to fight against it. We've got to demand they change.
Well, and as I was about to say, we have to encourage people to have the courage to speak up on social media. Mm-hmm. I realize you don't want to talk anybody into doing things that are jeopardize their jobs, because we all have mortgages to pay and so forth. But do what each of us can to open up the climate, open up the atmosphere, the societal atmosphere, to where we can, where people feel free to, more free at least, to speak up when they see things getting egregious.
And be brave enough to speak up and risk being canceled. Like, people are just going to have to just be brave enough to say what they think.
You may not get to sit at the cool kids table anymore, but
mm-hmm. Yeah. Ain't that a fact? I haven't sat there in a long time.
Well, how are we doing time-wise?
It's time to wrap it up. Time for everybody to hit that like button, hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Go to our Facebook page and comment and tell us your opinion. And you can donate if you want to, patreon.com/Barney and Clyde. But as we've said before in previous episodes, best thing you can do if you want to help us out is rate us on iTunes. Give us the highest rating you think we deserve.
Indeed. And thanks for listening, everybody. And until we meet again, stay vigilant.
Well, that's an interesting development.